Evening, I'd like to welcome all of you to our last official public meeting in this old building. The city council work session of Tuesday, April 8th, and call the meeting to order. And I would like to revise the agenda with everyone's approval to eliminate item number 7 for a further date.
I'm fine with that.
Everybody okay with that? Okay.
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay. So first we will have public comment. During public comment, we like everyone to be kind and respectful. Raise your hand when you want to speak, and you come up to the podium, give your mailing address, name and mailing address, 3 minutes or less. And we'll start with the audience and then we'll go to Zoom. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? Ken?
I'm Ken Potter. Mailing address is P.O. Box 492, Cannon Beach, 97110. Yeah, I'd like to speak in terms of, in reference to the open burning in the neighborhoods. And over on Elliott, which is a couple blocks away from us, there is a real problem with a vacation rental that always seems to have backyard burning going on, recreational fire, but it's always smoky. The smoke always blows across the fences into the yards there along Elliott. And it's either the, somehow that needs to be controlled so it's not causing a problem. Either the smokestack needs to be higher, the wood needs to be more clean burning, or both. Something needs to happen. I think it's just not right. Some, 1 or 2 individuals who shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of this weekly, monthly, just all season long outdoor burning. I just think that's it's not considerate of your neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. In the audience. Mary Beth?
I also want to speak to the recreational and yard debris burning. I wasn't aware we could burn yard debris in our yards, but that said, I do feel that there is a lack of responsibility and courteousness at short-term rentals with regard to the neighborhood. And so most people who live here don't have a fire in their yard every night. It's a very occasional thing. I don't have a problem with that. Short-term rentals, people come here, they're paying a lot of money to stay here. They want to get their money's worth. They're going to have that fire every night. We're going to roast those marshmallows every night. We're going to have fun. And so I think that having a moratorium on fire pits at short-term rentals would be helpful, because they don't have to have that relationship with their neighbors, and there's no way to work it out with them. They're gone before you can have that kind of conversation. So that's my recommendation, and I hope that that is something that's being considered. Another item on the agenda tonight is the Tolovana Rampley bill, and I'm delighted to hear that it's being rebuilt, and I'm hoping that it will make accessibility to the beach much easier for people with limited mobility. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
And Cottle, right?
Yes.
Anybody? Okay, now we'll go turn to Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make public comment? Would raise your hand and I will call on you. That's one last chance. Okay, thanks. So we will start with our discussion items, and the first item on the agenda is the introduction of Officer Jamie Birch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councilors. I'd like to bring Jamie up here. Get to be out here in front of everybody. Officer Birch joined us most recently from Oregon State Police and previously Clatsop County Sheriff's Office, where he worked as a corrections officer for 8.5 years. Jamie is married to his wonderful wife, Andrea, who is here. Andrea works for Clatsop Community Action up in Astoria, and their son Caden is here also in college and an exceptional soccer player. So if anybody wants to take on a game, Caden says he'll take you on right out here. So nice. Jamie comes in, he's already completed the academy. So once he's sworn in tonight, starting this weekend, he's going to be with a training officer. So he just has to complete his field of training before he's released out on his own. So he gets out there a lot quicker. He starts that on April 12th with Officer Jordan. And will be sworn in by Mayor Knopp. But first I'm going to have Jamie read the oath of office. Two glasses out there.
So there's 4 paragraphs available. As a criminal justice officer and in service for the city of Cannon Beach, my fundamental duty is to serve humankind, to safeguard lives and property, to protect all persons against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, the peaceful against violence or disorder, and to respect the constitutional rights of all people to liberty, equality, and justice. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all, maintain courageous calm in the face of danger, scorn or ridicule, develop self-restraint, and be constantly mindful of welfare of others. Honest in thought and deed in both my personal and official life. I will be exemplary in obeying the laws of the land and the regulations of my department. Whatever I see or hear of a confidential nature or that is confined to me in my official capacity will be kept ever secret unless revelation is necessary in the performance of my duty. I will never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, animosities, or friendships to influence my decisions. Without compromise and with relentlessness, I will uphold the laws affecting the duties of my profession courteously and appropriately, without fear or favor, malice or ill will, never employing unnecessary force or violence, and never accepting gratuities. I recognize my position as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust to be held so long as I am true to the ethics of the criminal justice system. I will constantly strive to achieve these objectives and ideals, dedicating myself before God to my chosen profession.
Mayor Knopp.
All right, face me.
Yes, ma'am.
And repeat after me.
Yes, ma'am.
I, Jamie Birch, do solemnly swear
I, Jamie Birch, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon.
and I will, should we do another take? And I will enforce the laws
and I will enforce the laws
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the city of Cannon Beach,
of the city of Cannon Beach,
Oregon,
Oregon,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
as a police officer for the city of Cannon Beach.
as a police officer for the city of Cannon Beach.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite Andrea and Caden to come up. I think Andrea's gonna pin the badge on us.
Us old people all need glasses.
We'd like to time you, so no pressure.
Might be here a while. Any minutes, she's.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome.
April.
And remember, I have a requirement, you stay the whole meeting. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have a discussion item for the Cannon Beach microbial tracking. And Karen?
Evening, council. I will make the introductions as I get to the end of the staff report here. Public health agencies, including Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, regularly test waters collected from rivers, streams, and marine sites across Oregon to measure the level of fecal bacteria, approximately 91 beaches. The Oregon Health Authority, OHA, partners with DEQ to monitor the Oregon coast for bacteria levels at priority public beaches through the Oregon Beach Monitoring Program, or OBMP. OBMP prioritizes beaches with high use and those where OBMP has measured greater concentrations of fecal bacteria. OHA uses data collected by OBMP to advise visitors about the risk of illness associated with exposure to high levels of fecal bacteria. Elevated fecal bacteria can come from humans, such as people camping, illegal dumping in a city storm drain, inappropriate recreational behavior, sewer systems, pets, livestock, or wildlife. Understanding contamination types can help resource managers better target contamination sources to mitigate or stop contamination from entering the water. Knowing the contamination sources and developing measures would decrease the risk of people being exposed to fecal or other pollution. Over the course of the testing process, the City of Cannon Beach has worked closely with DEQ and OHA on understanding the details of the test results and to collaborate on additional ways the city might isolate the originating source. DEQ routinely audits the city's sewer treatment plant, and the city has conducted an in-depth inspection of the sewer system looking for possible areas of concern. Cannon Beach is a dog-friendly community, and we know that we live in an area where our wildlife roams freely amongst us. People ride horses on the beach, and we have a healthy bird population on and around the ecosystem of Haystack Rock. It is understandable that we would have animal fecal matter throughout the ocean shores. We also know that illegal camping, RVs dumping in the city storm drains, and inappropriate recreational behavior are a growing concern in our area, as it is in other Oregon tourist destinations. Partnering with DEQ and OHA, City of Cannon Beach is exploring the idea of public education campaign that would educate visitors coming to our area on how their behavior might contribute to some of the challenges we face in this arena and how they can help. As these plans further develop, city staff will bring council our proposal for ideas to consider for this public education campaign. The city has invited members from both DEQ and OHA to highlight the processes and results of the microbial tracking conducted through the Oregon Beach Monitoring Program. Tonight, I have with us Steve Hansen, who will be presenting to you. We also have York Johnston, Malaysia Grabner, Melissa, Tiffany Yelton Brown, Kat Maloney, and Michael Locke. From OHA, we have Linda Novitsky, and she's on the Zoom. Steve, I'm going to hand it over to you to start your presentation. Rusty, if you can cue up his slides.
I might grab that remote because I bounce around a little bit. Yeah. Thank you. Only 3 buttons. I should be smart enough to work that. So thank you guys for having me. Thank you all for having me. I'm Steve Hansen. I work out of the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Laboratory in Hillsborough. I'm in the water quality monitoring section. I work as a monitoring coordinator, and part of my job is to assist in the management of the beach monitoring grant that Karen mentioned. My goal here this evening is to try to improve everyone's understanding of the 2022 microbial source tracking study results. So I'll provide a little bit of background, hopefully enough to help kind of understand the rationale and the process that was undertaken in the study. Kind of go over what was done and give a high-level review of the results and some of the basic conclusions. There we go. All right. Thank you. And then at the end, I'll point you to some other resources, and myself and the other DEQ staff and OHA staff will hopefully be able to answer your questions. So thank you for that good description of the Oregon Beach Monitoring Program. We are the folks that conducted the microbial source tracking study that was completed in 2022. As she mentioned, the beach monitoring program monitors up and down the coast. It's actually a federally funded program that DEQ conducts in coordination with the Oregon Health Authority. And you covered a lot of my information there, so we'll save some time and I'll skip through some stuff. One key element to understanding the microbial source tracking study and all of the things that we do is understanding what fecal indicator bacteria are and kind of what they mean and where they come from. So these are bacteria that are unique to feces. They are relatively easy to test for, and their presence is related to potential illness, usually gastro illness. So what this means is that if you have increasing concentrations of fecal indicator bacteria, then you can build an associated with increasing risk of people becoming ill. So fecal indicator bacteria in and of themselves are not necessarily, you're not necessarily looking for pathogens, but they are an indicator of potential other pathogens, whether those are other bacteria or viruses or protozoa or whatever. And very importantly, the fecal indicator bacteria, their sources are from all warm-blooded animals, as she mentioned. So that includes humans, but it includes plovers and gray whales and everything in between. So it's a broad source, and it's that way for a reason, because we want to know if it's there. So the DEQ uses the recommended indicators, and they're different whether you're in marine water or freshwater. So the marine water indicator organism is called Enterococcus, and the freshwater indicator is a more common to most people. E. coli is the indicator for those. And the beach monitoring program has used national guidance to set criteria to try to figure out at what level of these fecal indicator bacteria concentrations does human health begin to be compromised? When is there too much risk for illness? And these are based on large epidemiological studies that have been conducted over time that compare fecal indicator bacteria concentrations to measured rates of illness. So the beach monitoring program has selected 130 as the beach action value. And that's 130 Enterococcus per 100 milliliters. And when a marine sample is collected and that value exceeds 130, then you'll see the beach signs here, which might be familiar to folks, get opened up and a health advisory is issued. So Cannon Beach and Tolovana Beach, they're at kind of the same beach, but they have different IDs in the EPA system. They generally have a beach advisory or so every year, maybe one or two every year, pretty regularly. And also the creeks that empty onto to the beaches themselves have higher bacteria concentrations. So we consider that when we determine the risk, as well as the popularity of the beach. And Cannon Beach and Tolovana Beach are right up near the top of the most popular beaches in the state of Oregon. So you have fecal indicator bacteria concentrations and you're very popular. And those two things make it a priority in our eyes to keep an eye for the risk to public health. So we've monitored here for over 20 years, I think, and we will, as long as people keep coming here, and we will probably continue to because it's such a popular beach. So these concentrations have been observed for some time, and back in 2012, some folks here might recall that we did a study where we, if you can see, there are a number of green and red dots on the map here that are kind of spread throughout Cannon Beach, where we conducted a study to try to figure out kind of geographically where the bacteria was coming from. And kind of the 2-cent version of the results there was that we found that the concentrations were increasing on the way down the stream, right? So they increased as you move downstream in the creek. And then we used those results from the 2012 study to help guide where we could follow up in the 2022 study. So what the 2012 study was not able to do was to look at what was the source of the bacteria. Where did the bacteria, what were the organisms that were providing that bacteria to the system? And in order to do that, you need to do microbial source tracking. And I'm going to get into some jargon here, so please excuse me, but hopefully it will help in understanding the process. So microbial source tracking is a method that allows to analyze for the presence of specific sources. And we use this quantitative polymerase chain reaction. qPCR is a pretty common term nowadays, was used to do it in this particular study. The analysis was conducted by the EPA Manchester Environmental Laboratory in Washington. And what qPCR does is it uses what are called markers to look for specific microbial DNA sequences that are then associated to particular hosts. So the markers that were available to us for this study, there were only 3 different sources that were available, and they were human, dog, and ruminant sources. The human source, there were 2 separate markers that were recommended to use because the human biome is a little bit more diverse than you might see with dogs or elk. All right, so I do want to talk a little bit about the interpretation of qPCR results because they're a little bit trickier than just a regular concentration. So when genes, I'm talking about DNA genes here, not Calvin Klein. When genes are at a high enough concentration in water, then the markers, these qPCR markers, are truly able to quantify the number of genes. And this quantity of genes can be compared between samples and cross sites for that one marker only. What you cannot do is compare the count of genes of human markers to the count of genes to dog markers for some sort of proportional analysis to say, oh, well, there's clearly more elk here than there is dog because there's more gene counts. It's just, it doesn't work that way because of the way that the genes are introduced and survive in the system. Unfortunately, we aren't able to do that. So you're only allowed to compare gene concentrations to the same marker. So the same DG3 dog marker at this sample to DG3 marker at the next sample. Furthermore, sometimes and actually pretty often in this study, the genes are there at too low of a concentration to be able to actually give a number, to be able to assign a number of genes per some volume. And all that can be said with any confidence is that the gene was there at some low concentration. All right, so hopefully that gives you some sense of microbial source tracking and qPCR. And we'll get now into the actual 2022 sampling that was conducted. So we used 10 sites that were based largely on the 2012 study, where we found high fecal indicator bacteria results. They were spread across E. coli, Gower Creek here that empties onto E. coli court, and Chisana drainages. Each of the drainages had a marine site out on the beach. We call it a marine site. And they're designated with the green dots there on the table. And if you're lucky enough, you have good enough eyes to see the little blue dots on the map. Those are the marine sites. And then there was also where the freshwater, E. coli Creek, or what we call Gower Creek, where it empties onto E. coli court, and Chisana, where those empty onto the beach, that was a second site, a freshwater, what we would call a freshwater site. And then Gower and Chisana had two extra sites a little bit higher up in town, and then most of them were near 101. The upper one was near 101 or above. All right. And then in terms of the number of samples, it's important to note here that 10 sampling events happened. I mean, they were spread throughout the course of the summer, which is a little different than 2012. And what we were looking to identify here, what we wanted to know, what are the sources of the fecal indicator bacteria, particularly, and really kind of only, when the concentrations of the fecal indicator bacteria were high enough that there might be some increased risk, to public health. We don't expect there to be no fecal indicator bacteria in the water. So we're interested in when they're elevated. So the microbial source tracking analysis was not done on all samples. It was only done on samples when the fecal indicator bacteria concentrations were high enough to raise concern about some illness. So what that meant in practice was when we went to a site, every 10 times we went to a site, we collected 2 bottles. We kept one and we analyzed it for fecal indicator bacteria concentration, and we sent the second bottle off to the EPA, who would process it and hold it until we said, yeah, this has got a little bit higher bacteria concentration. Why don't you go ahead and it's met some threshold. Why don't you go ahead and analyze it? So the thresholds that we used are listed there. For marine water, we did 35 Enterococcus per 100 milliliters. And for the freshwater samples, 126 organisms per 100 milliliters. Those are actually based on different type of water quality standard that again relates to illness, but it kind of focuses more on consistent bacteria levels rather than bouncing around. So they're what we call a geomean standard, but they are based on a water quality standard. All right, so that is how we did the sampling. I'm gonna actually skip first to the seasonal influence. This just shows when samples exceeded that threshold and got analyzed for microbial source tracking. The blue bars represent the marine samples, and the orange bars represent the number of samples that met the threshold for the freshwater E. coli. Keep in mind that there are more than twice as many freshwater sites. There were 7 freshwater sites versus 3 marine sites. So obviously there's more orange than blue for that reason alone. And you can see from the plot that clearly October was the hot spot. November had several hits, and there were a few in the summer. And if you were to actually look at those concentrations instead of whether or not they met the threshold, it would be even more pronounced because the fecal indicator bacteria concentrations in October were significantly higher than any of the summer concentrations. Oh, wrong one. All right, so this is a presentation or a plot of the number of detections for each source at each site. And there's a lot to look at here, and I apologize that the numbers are a little small here, but I will try to kind of walk through the big pictures here. So again, the length of the bar corresponds to the number of detections for each source. The markers for the different sources have different colors. Blue is for ruminant detection, orange is for a human detection, and gray is for dog detections. The sites are listed along the bottom, and they're grouped by drainage, and they're ordered so that the site that's furthest to the left is going to be the marine site. And then as you read the sites to the right, you're basically walking upstream. So from a big picture perspective, if we look at sort of those first sites on the left in each of the drainages, the marine sites in each drainage, they each only had one sample out of 10 that met the threshold for doing MST analysis. Now the E. coli and actually both of the human markers showed up, but they were too low to quantify. And it's important thing to keep in mind here is that we're not looking, if we look at the actual concentration of the fecal indicator bacteria concentration, that E. coli site was a pretty low concentration of fecal indicator bacteria, especially compared to the other sites. If you go to the Chusana, the Tolovana Beach marine site and the E. coli Court marine site there that's out in the surf, these both were pretty high fecal indicator bacteria concentrations. They were over, and in one case, very far over the beach advisory level. And in both of these, which are kind of the things that would flip the sign, only ruminant was detected, and it was only detected at too low a concentration to quantify. So human and dog were not identified in those, which kind of begs the question of, is there something else causing those marine violations? So now to look at the freshwater sites, which are basically the sites next to the right of the marine sites. They all had more MST threshold samples than the beach ones. So they tended to have higher fecal indicator bacteria concentrations. The Tolovana pipe in the Chisnea drainage on the left-hand side there is the tallest of them. It had 4 samples out of the 10 that got analyzed for qPCR because they met the threshold, the most of any of the sites, and human was detected in all 4 of the samples. Human was also detected in the next site upstream from there, in the 2 MST samples that were collected in that site. Skipping over to the E. coli Creek site, E. coli Creek only had 1 freshwater site. And it had three samples that met the MST threshold. And the ruminant showed up in all 3, and the human showed up in all 3. And actually, this freshwater site is the only site where the human genes were high enough that one of the samples could be quantified, and it had both of the human genes were identified in 2 of the 3 that were analyzed in that freshwater. But there's a caveat that goes with that. Believe that site is downstream of the wastewater treatment facility. And qPCR, unlike the fecal indicator bacteria concentration, does not differentiate between viable and non-viable cells. So if there's a dead cell that still has its DNA, which they tend to maintain, you can get sort of dead DNA hits from that. So look at that with precaution. And then at Gower Creek at E. coli Court there were actually 3 samples that met the MST result. Only none of the markers were found in all 3, so only it shows up as 2 on this graph, but there were actually 3 MST samples done. And the urban site just upstream also had 3 samples, and dog happened to be found in all 3 of those samples. Now, in general, the freshwater sites, a human marker was picked up pretty commonly. There's a lot of orange bars up there. However, in all but that one that I mentioned in the E. coli site, they were all too low to quantify. So for better or for worse, we can't draw any relationship between the fecal indicator bacteria concentration and like an increasing level of human markers. There's not enough resolution there. I will say there were some quite high fecal indicator bacteria. There were high fecal indicator bacteria concentrations in there, and the human markers didn't respond to that. They didn't increase with them. So so that is something to keep in mind. I also want to note that in talking with the chemists and the folks who have done this study, and my exposure to them, really when you conduct these samples, I would say it is expected that you would find human markers in an area where there are a lot of humans. So that is something to keep in mind. Just as you would be expected to see elk and everything else. So I will comment on the ruminant marker, though. The ruminant marker was a little bit easier to look at, as it was generally quantifiable, so we could get an actual gene count. And those numbers did tend to correlate increasing numbers of elk marker counts as the fecal indicator bacteria increased. All right, so we have just some basic conclusions from the samples that we had. To reiterate some of the points that I just talked about, the ruminants were the most common, and the ruminant marker was the only marker that appeared to increase, that we were able to observe an increase in concentration pretty regularly with increases in the fecal indicator bacteria concentrations. The human markers were found in over half of the samples, but in all but one instance, they were too low to quantify. So the study wasn't able to find a strong signal that human markers increased with increasing fecal indicator bacteria concentrations, and no apparent source of high levels of human fecal contamination were found. Dog detections were the least common, except for the one site in Gower Creek. And even here, there wasn't a particularly strong signal of them causing fecal indicator bacteria concentration hits. I would add another point that's not on there, and that is that that the ruminant, human, and dog markers that we used, or the sources that we looked for, maybe were not the best. We're unable to identify what was causing the high marine sample beach action value exceedances. And then the study was consistent with what we saw in 2012, where we were able to have multiple sites on a stream, concentrations increased as we moved downstream. And as you saw with the timing of the thresholds, there was definitely a skew towards October and November when the rains came, the bacteria concentrations in. So if you have not yet, if you're interested and you have not yet had a chance to look at the story map, that's available on the DEQ webpage. There's a long URL that's listed here. This goes through kind of, gives a good story of the study. If you just Google Oregon DEQ bacteria reports, it will take you to this URL that's listed here, and you'll be able to find the story map, the 2012 report, and the 2022 Cannon Beach MST report. I want to voice my appreciation to staff at the office, the EPA Office of Research and Development, who helped explain these results to us and give us technical advice, as well as the US EPA Manchester Environmental Laboratory that conducted the analysis for us. And this information is all available in alternative formats if desired.
Steve, do you want to talk about the handout that council has?
Yeah, so I was working through this and on my way out of town, and I didn't get to spend as much time, and this came in late from the presentation. But I thought it was a useful way of trying to look at both space and time at the same, in the same image. And what this shows is the boxes are color coded and pattern coded. So a green box means that we collected a sample there, but the concentration was below our threshold. And again, our threshold is kind of a lower bacteria concentration. The yellow box means that it met the threshold, and so we did a qPCR analysis. But it wouldn't have, for example, if it was a marine site, it wouldn't have triggered a beach action value. It was just an elevated concentration. And then the red box means that if it was a marine site, it would trigger a beach action value. And in freshwater, it would have been over that 406 E. coli per 100 milliliters, which is an equivalent type of risk. And then in those boxes, the yellow and red boxes where the threshold was met, is reported what the, or classified what the marker results were like. If the marker, say for dog, was analyzed, but nothing was found, then it'll be a lowercase d for dog, a lowercase r for ruminant, so forth. And then if they saw it, they knew it was there, but they couldn't, it was too low to tell how many really there, then it's kind of in just a capital letter hum for human, and it's not bolded or anything. That means they saw it, but they couldn't quantify it. If it's in all caps and it's bolded, that means that they were able to quantify it, that it was a higher concentration. And you can see from this, you can see all the red happens in October, a little bit in November. And you can see, let's see, which is like the Tolovana Beach, you can see that human is all the way across on the top of the human, of the site 36221, Chisana Creek. That's the Tolovana pipe outfall there. You can see that human was detected in all of them, but not quantified. And it was only actually quantified on that E. coli Creek site.
Steve, can I just clarify something that you mentioned in your presentation as talked about the samples being held until you guys do further evaluation? Once it's elevated, you have them go ahead and do an actual test on that. What's the turnaround time between you getting back with them and saying to sample? How long is that sample good for?
Well, they pre-process it.
Okay.
And I'm not 100% sure, but most of the qPCR that we do at our lab, if we can get it filtered and frozen within 24 to 48 hours, you can actually hold it frozen for months.
Okay.
In fact, they may even still have them. Yeah.
Okay.
Once they're frozen, they hold for a good
Okay,
time.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions from council?
Glad I didn't eat dinner before I came.
The red and the October timeframe obviously indicates our first rainfall after a dry summer period, which we've discussed for years, associated with what we feel is part of this testing result that we're seeing. So this helps kind of put a visual to that. I appreciate that. I just want to acknowledge you guys and say how much I appreciate how much you've helped us be able to try to isolate what is going on and try to remedy this. Both DEQ and OHA team has been very helpful to city staff, and I appreciate the education on so much of this that's almost like looking at a foreign language, except my wastewater guys. But that has been extremely helpful for us. So I appreciate you boiling this down and bringing it to council for me.
So we do have a question.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Yes.
who's the city councilor.
Oh, yes, hi. That's all very complicated, and you really made it so we could at least semi-understand it, which is great. But one question I have is, you put those signs up in the water, saying don't go in the water because there's a high level of bacteria in the water. But what about in the outfalls that are along the beach between the, where the vegetation line is and the actual water, those sort of like little streams, how come they're not posted as well?
Well, that's a bit of just a jurisdictional problem. We are, the Beach Act, which funds our program, only gives us authority to post advisories based on marine samples. That is, that's where they draw the line. We have been able to collect other samples from the outfalls, which we do regularly during the summer as well, at least at the beach outfall, because we know that it has informed us greatly on where where the bacteria may be coming from. But we're not allowed to issue an advisory based on that.
So if children are playing in those outfalls because they have, there's no warning, whose jurisdiction is it?
Well, it would probably, I'm uncertain. I know that we have wrestled with how we word the signing for those before, because there are instances where we do not want to steer kids into a creek, which we think may be the source of the higher sample. In those instances, I would imagine, and other folks, feel free to jump in from the DQ on this. I believe we try to work with the jurisdictions who could be state parks, or they could be the city, to try to find ways to inform. Like, I think, if I remember correctly, Ecola Court does have a sign that kind of tries to address that. But our hands are a bit tied on that.
Yeah,
Somebody wants to jump in?
I was just gonna say, there's nothing to keep signage from being added. By the way, I'm Tiffany Elton Brown with Oregon DEQ. I work with the section that issues the permit to the sewage treatment plant and also determines the compliance with that permit. And so there's if there was a desire or a need to put up signage in creeks, that's great. The permit for the sewage treatment plant has a requirement that if there ever was an overflow or an upset, then the city would take action to notify the public so that they would avoid areas and be safe.
Absolutely.
And the city does that. So that's wonderful.
So you are testing year round?
Unfortunately, just during the summer is.
So it's this time frame that's shown here, the June to November.
Yep, yeah. Yeah, we usually finish, correct me if I'm wrong, the end of October, I believe. Yep.
Right.
Other questions?
So, yeah, I did. So maybe I'll ask Karen, because she probably can answer this for me. So Karen, do we post warnings on the outfalls when we know that there's a high reading in the ocean?
Right now, we have 2 locations that the signs are flipped associated with the test results.
No, I know they get flipped in the ocean itself. I'm talking about in those outfalls between the vegetation line and the ocean. The outfalls that people are complaining, that kids play in, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. At this time, there's not signage at every one of the outfalls.
Okay.
So the 2 locations are Gower and Sullivan, where we flip signs. Okay.
But those signs are just for the ocean, right? Right, Karen?
They're at the locations where the testing is occurring.
So, okay, so if there's a high concentration in the ocean, there's no sign or no signage on the outfalls leading into the ocean. Those creeks that the kids like to play in, there's no way for people to know that those creeks might not be good to play in because there's high fecal content or high percentage in the ocean. So the flipping of the signs, if I understand it, I might be completely wrong. My understanding is the flipping of the signs has only to do with high content in the ocean, because that's where the testing is done. But there is no warning at all for those streams that are leading in from the vegetation line right down to the ocean. There's no warning there.
If I understand you, you're asking me at the storm outfall, you're asking me if there's currently signage that we flip or indicate as a result of the test.
Right.
And the answer to that is no.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For Karen, well, for both of you. Karen, did you indicate, or maybe one of you indicated, that there is a sign at outfall by Ecola Creek.
We have two locations where we flip signs, correct, Trevor? I want to just make sure I'm saying this accurately.
And that is the only place that there was significant human fecal matter. So the other outfalls from reading this chart, and I believe that you said that the human is bolded from October 24th at Acola Creek. And that was the only significant place that it was. Even though there were markers. So at the other outfalls, there was no significance. It wasn't over the threshold.
Wasn't elevated.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I should mention and be clear that the low level that's measured, that where in the table here, even when they're not quantified, there is unfortunately, there's a bit of a gray area between not being able to see it and being able to quantify it. There's not zero risk there, but it's uncertain. Where I've mentioned that these fecal indicator bacteria concentrations, we look at these big epidemiological studies to figure out how much risk there is. That data just doesn't exist for these qPCR markers. So we have uncertainty about that. But if you look at the paired fecal indicator bacteria concentrations and use that to assess the risk to illness, that's kind of how we have tried to back out how much risk there is associated with the sampling that we did.
So where the most risk is indicating there are signs.
And I just want to clarify what triggers city staff to go out and flip the signs, is the team that's doing the testing. They advise us that there's elevated levels and for us to flip the signs. And then once the testing shows clear, they advise us to flip the signs back. Typically, that's a pretty short period of time, but they're the trigger for us to go flip that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so,
Go ahead, Lisa.
okay, so I'm looking at page 9 and I'm looking at the Tolovana outfall, and it seems like there's a huge increase in Chisana Creek between Sunset and Tolovana outfall. Am I reading that right?
In the count of markers,
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind that there were 4 out of a total of 10 samples that were analyzed for the microbial source tracking. But it is true that the human was present in each one that was analyzed, and for the site further up. And I'm not 100% sure I know what you're using to bracket, but the furthest site upstream, it's numbered 37266.
Yeah.
That we tested that 10 times. We never got a fecal indicator bacteria concentration that met the threshold to do an analysis for MST.
Right. So the highest was between 37257 and 36221. That's where you saw the big jump.
Well, yeah, and keep in mind that that's going from marine to freshwater. So that first site is the marine site, so actually out in the surf. And then you walk up and sample where the pipe comes out at Tolovana. And the pipe at Tolovana, and this has traditionally been the case, it's usually higher than the marine site. That is
Typical.
That's typical, yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm still not understanding. I know you said it was a jurisdictional thing, but if there's a high count at the pipe and you have this stream going from the pipe right down to the ocean, and there's like a creek there, I mean, the jurisdictional thing, I guess I don't get that. I don't get why that would stop you from putting a warning sign on that little creek, since it is probably the highest there.
So Councilmember Kerr, this is Karen. I just want to differentiate the difference between the signage we're talking about. The signage we're talking about with the testing are signs that DEQ provides, and we flip them when we're instructed to do so. If you go out to the Gower outfall, the city already has a permanent sign that is posted there that is exposed all the time. It's not a sign that we flip back and forth like the advisory sign. It is
Okay.
a sign that's permanent there that tells you not to play in that.
Okay, good.
And you
Okay.
can see how many people abide by that. A big
Well,
sign, and it's there and it's visible all the time.
Well, maybe put a big poop emoji on it.
Well, that's part of our
Campaign.
campaign is to put a QR code on there and hope we get enough curiosity that people click on that to have an extra emphasis of get out of the creek,
Exactly. Okay, thanks.
We're trying everything.
Okay. Thanks, Karen.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you again, Beth.
Thanks.
You did a great job.
For all of you.
Great job with the cleaning, by the way. Thanks, you guys, for coming over. Appreciate it.
I'm thinking.
It's me. How are you feeling now? How are you feeling now?
Doing well.
Sorry about the disruption.
That's okay. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Tolovana Ramp rebuild project.
Right. One of the city's master plan projects is the rebuilding of the Tolovana vehicle ADA ramp. This ramp is primarily beach access for all first responders when there is a medical event or water rescue on the beach. In addition, it is used for special large events such as Sandcastle event and is also the only location for boaters to access the waters when the police department issues a permit. The ramp is due for maintenance because of its age and current condition based on the high usage. During the budget process last year, council approved funding in the amount of $65,000 for the development of proposed design in 2024-25 adopted budget. City staff organized a cross-functional team comprised of police, fire, emergency management, Oregon State Parks, and Public Works to achieve the charter of developing a proposed design. All of these members are key users or maintain the ramp. The charter of the team was multifaceted and would address multiple needs. The current design is very high maintenance and costly to keep cleared, and the ADA portion of the ramp acts as a log catcher most of the year due to high tides and storms. In 2018, the city participated in an exercise with the Coast Guard and military where a drill was conducted to test the ship-to-shore drop potential along the North Coast area. An evaluation was conducted on multiple coastal locations that could be a potential candidate for a drop site for the delivery of goods by the Navy following a significant disaster such as a Cascadia event. Cannon Beach was a strong candidate. However, the current condition of our ramp would require it to be rebuilt to be a successful drop site. There are numerous grants available for projects of this nature. However, before staff proceeded with pursuing those funding possibilities, the team wanted to ensure that we are heading in a direction that council supports with our proposed design. Here tonight is a representative from KPFF, the engineering firm who worked with our team and ultimately developed several proposals for the team to consider and bring forward to council. The team has chosen our preferred design, and tonight we would like to share all the designs we considered and how we arrived at our chosen design. I'd like to introduce Jessica, who is from KPFF, Jessica Zink, from KPFF, who worked to develop the designs for us and walk the team through the options. And she's going to do the same thing for council tonight. Jessica, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Super. Yep. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Can we get the slide deck up, please? Can you guys see it? I'm sorry.
Yep. Hang on
Okay.
one.
Working on it, yep.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'll holler when it's up.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And we have alternative one is up right now.
Great. Yeah, so Karen gave an excellent intro. I'm with KPFF and we helped develop 3 alternatives and then narrowed it down to one that we're calling the preferred alternative. These are all at about 10% design, so they're not final, but it is just trying to kind of illustrate the different ideas that we were looking at to try to help fix the problem that you guys have there. So this first one, alternative one, the motorized ramp down in the lower portion of the drawing, it's flattened out because the existing condition, which I know you guys experience this a lot more than me, but just part of us working through the design, we got our surveyors to go out there and do an aerial image and get some topo information. And so we were able to see that there is a pretty big hump in the middle of the ramp that I imagine is really hard to navigate in a vehicle. So we're flattening it out, smoothing it out, I would say, to about 14%, as shown right there in the drawing, replacing it with concrete, and then it's located roughly in the same alignment that's there today. And then it's a little bit, yeah, it's roughly the same alignment. Actually, it starts and stops kind of in the same location. The ADA portion, we're trying to separate the two, keep them separate, just so that we can meet ADA slopes. And so it starts roughly at the top of the vehicular ramp. It's shown there in the green, and then it runs down towards the bottom of the existing stairs that are there. And what we've tried to do is limit the steeper portion of the ramp that would require handrails. We're trying to keep that elevated above what appears to be the debris catching elevation, which looks like it's around 18.5 or 19 feet. And so that's why there's that call out right there at about that elevation. And so from there down to the beach, it would flatten out to the point where it wouldn't require handrails. And so we're really trying to limit the vertical obstructions of things that's going to catch logs. Some other things that are shown here is that we would get rid of the existing ADA ramp and repair it with some kind of vegetation. And there would likely be some kind of split rail fence or something along the parking lot side, because we wouldn't want people to accidentally walk directly towards the ocean. I think that's all I had on alternative one. Karen, would you like me to pause at each one for questions or get
Next
through
slide.
all? Okay.
Okay. Alternative 2.
Actually,
1 second.
That's the right one.
Option 2.
I think it's the other PDF, just the second page.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. Alternative 2. Go ahead.
Okay, so this one is fairly similar in the motorized section of the ramp. We've tilted or rotated it slightly to point a little bit more south, just to provide a different access to the beach. The width is the same as the previous one, which I neglected to mention. We're showing the width as 24 feet. The idea is that it's mainly one direction, except for Sandcastle Day when I understand people need to go both ways. And so we're trying to keep it wide enough for that. And then in this option, the pedestrian ramp is narrower. And we extended it up to the ADA parking in the parking lot. And that allows us to come down a little bit faster. And so this one wouldn't require handrails because the whole ramp is under the threshold that would require that. Next slide. And so the third alternative, similar again in the vehicular ramp, it's just rotated again a little bit more to the south. And then this one, the pedestrian ramp starts in a similar location to alternative 2, but it ends a little bit further south than the previous alternatives. And the way that we can make that happen is that we steepened it up on the uphill side on the parking lot side.
There you go. You're cutting out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we steepened it up in the parking lot side so that we could end the ramp sooner.
Yeah, we're there. Keep cutting out.
Okay. Should I do this alternative again?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so the vehicular ramp is just rotated a little bit more to the south, very similar to alternative 2. And the pedestrian route, similar to alternative 2, starts up at the parking stalls, the ADA parking stalls, but then comes down faster. The slope is a little bit steeper so that we can end the ramp shorter. And this allows for some stairs, an opportunity for some stairs to connect right near that informational sign that's there on the corner. That's the main differences in this one. And so now the next slide.
Our preferred alternative.
Yes, which is alternative 1. And the other benefit to this option is the pedestrian path, we've widened it to 10 feet. And the idea there is that any debris that we're going to design it to try to not catch any debris, but if something does get caught and need to get cleared at the bottom of the beach, then the ramp is wide enough that a vehicle can get down, the maintenance vehicle. And then we've included some additional signage locations and just some more elevation information, but it's alternative 1.
And I'll just highlight a couple things, if I could. We widened the width of the ramp slightly, and that was to meet some of the requirements to be a ship-to-shore drop site. Or partnering with OPRD, their desire was to replace or rebuild the stairs that they have at the location there. And so the ending of the ramp at the stair location would give us an opportunity. It also is more adaptable to the Moby mats that HRAP has secured. And as far as how they extend out onto the beach, this design is much more desirable than our current zigzag ADA ramp. Our original intent was to combine the ADA with the vehicle ramp, and it was just not possible in order to meet the ADA requirements. And so that's why it remains separate. But as Jessica mentioned, with this design, it kind of eliminates or mitigates the log catching aspect of this and some of the incidents that we've had in the past with people trying to walk right off into that ramp. So the design addresses all those aspects. Any questions? Any comments, anything you think we might have missed as a collective team when we kind of work through the process? Is it something that looks like what you would hope to see, or?
So is this proposal going to go before the planning commission with it being at Ocean Shore?
At this point, the next steps would be if you say, yes, it's looking the way we would hope, then we would go through our normal process. So go through the planning commission. Obviously, there's permits we have to work through with OPRD. They're a member of our team. But first and foremost, I needed to make sure we were tracking in the direction you guys wanted to see before we go through the expense of those permits and go through the city process. It'll go in front of the Public Works Committee, next week for them to weigh in on what they think in this, and then through our normal process.
It looks like a great improvement, Karen. It's great. I think it's.
I think it really will be. Councilmember Kerr, I'm hopeful for this, and I think it will provide a lot of things to the recreational users as well as our first responders. They gave us a lot of excellent input relative to access for medical events, water rescue, and that entrance there being blocked by people that want, they tend to sit out there and watch king tides and other types of things. So we've discussed markers and how we will handle that situation to eliminate that issue. State Parks has access to grants and funding that the city may not as a municipality. So we want to partner in pursuing those funding opportunities together as a team.
Well, I appreciate the approach that you took with getting everyone that's involved.
Yeah.
And making the decision.
Thank you.
I think that helps a lot.
Can you clarify?
Going in the direction that you would like, then those next steps that I shared would be what we would do.
Can you clarify for me what is the plan with the current ADA ramp? So that's gonna be filled and become part of the bank towards the east?
So the lower leg of it, the last half of the zigzag, if you will, that would go away.
Okay.
Okay. The upper half would remain, but we would fill that in and reestablish the original vegetation and whatnot there. I'm getting a lot of feedback from the folks that are working on the Ecola Creek stabilization project and the surf rider folks that are there talking about the natural habitat that can be utilized. And I think that that's going to be a really nice reestablishment of that bank. And I think that they will be pivotal in our discussion about the vehicle aspect of it that goes out, the mouth of it that goes out to the ocean shore, utilizing the existing riprap, but we are going to have to improve that. And we may be able to piggyback off of some of those ideas that they had for that project that could be utilized here. So they're going to be a member of our team once you guys give me your thoughts on it, and then we will add those members to the team and start going through the normal city approval process.
So any other questions? Do we have consensus that the preferred alternative is one we would like them to pursue?
I support that.
Yeah.
Lisa?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, good job.
Thank you so much, Council. Appreciate it.
Is Bruce gonna do this next item?
Lisa, yeah.
Okay, so the next discussion item is regarding yard debris. Bruce? You gonna? That was Lisa.
That was Lisa. Yeah, Bruce is muted, right?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I'm sorry. This is a continuation of a discussion that occurred earlier. You heard some people talking tonight during the public to be heard. And that's my introduction.
Thank you for that brief introduction.
Brief is good.
Okay, who would like to start this brief discussion? Anybody?
So I think this discussion should revolve heavily around the comments that the fire chief provided us, that he's the expert, not technically in the room right now, but the expert in the room when it comes to fires.
We could get him in the room.
I don't think he wants to be in the room. But I think his comments should hold the most weight in terms of what his opinion on what repercussions would come about because of anything that we do with recreational fires. feel like we're also all agreed yard debris burning and household waste is
Yeah, yard debris and
ixnayed.
Yeah,
Yeah, we all agreed on it the other night.
But
I'm also
oh, go ahead.
I was also wondering if anything could or should be done under 808 040 as far as the distance of a fire and whether we should be looking at any changes to that. And I was kind of surprised that you can have a branch above your head 10 feet and have a fire. That seems, I'd be nervous about that.
Right.
And then there is the fire within 10 feet of a building or structure. And I just wonder if there's anything we can do, short of a ban. Again, I agree with Eric and comments about listening to the fire chief. But if there's anything we can do that reduces, mitigates some of this neighbor to neighbor issue by changing the distance requirements from a neighboring property.
Lisa?
Yeah, so I would have to strongly disagree with the position of we need to listen to the fire chief, because I don't see that what he said, first of all, what he said doesn't require any fire expertise. It's an opinion with no evidence to support it. He's saying, this is what I think will happen. I think there'll be more illegal fires on the beach, but there's nothing to support that would happen. And so I think it seems to make no sense to me to put the desires of keeping fires in short-term rentals above the health and safety of our residents who work and live here, to say nothing of the damage to the environment as a whole. So, I'm not trying to second guess a fire chief. I know he's an expert on fire. And if his opinion had anything to do with that expertise, I would think strongly before I spoke to it. But in this case, there's nothing to back it up. He's just saying, well, I think it's going to cause more recreation. We don't know that. There's nothing to support that. And I really, I can't believe that people complaining about what's happening to them in this community. I have a petition here signed by so many people about wanting to get rid of the backyard fires. These are the people who live in the community. They're residents here, and they want it gone from STRs. And in fact, Deanna, you signed it too. You signed it.
I did sign it. You are correct, Councillor Kerr. And I, much like Ken Potter and Mary Beth Cottle, live in that neighborhood. And so I signed that petition from an emotional standpoint at the time. If you look at that petition, the bulk of the people who signed that petition live in that general area. It's a canopied area. There are wetlands there. The smoke tends to just get caught in that area. So I've had a chance. So I signed it emotionally. I was not sitting at the dais at the time that I signed that. I don't like having to close my windows in the summertime, but I think that banning the fires is going to be a huge enforcement issue. And I have to respect what Chief Rickman has said. That's kind of where I am on that. But I hope you can understand that I do live in that part of town, and so I do understand the concerns.
Of wanting to breathe and to keep your windows open in the summer. I mean, to me, this is just a no-brainer. Again, Chief Rickman is not giving a fire-related expertise opinion here. He's just saying, based on no evidence, what he is afraid might happen. So if it happens, then we can address it. But I don't think there's any evidence in his letter to support his opinion. And it has nothing to do with respect for the chief. Again, if this was fire-based, if this opinion was based on actual fire data or what he has to do with evidence to support it, I would feel differently. But I just don't see how you can shut out all those people in the community who don't want to have to breathe in this kind of smoke. And there's study after study done about what the danger to the environment is from these recreational fires. I mean, I don't know. I guess the next step would be for someone to file a nuisance claim and drag the city into court again. But I mean, to me, that's a ridiculous solution to this. The solution is to just ban them in short-term rentals, see how it works out, how it plays out, and then see how, if it really indeed does increase, sorry, if it does increase the illegal recreational fires on the beach. I'm talking about the ones right by the dune grass. Who's to say that that would happen? How do you know that?
So our current charter has an entire chapter 8.04 about nuisances, and that's something that an individual could call the code enforcer about under our current code. If there's an issue with excessive smoke, that's something that I think they've responded to that neighborhood a couple of times about nuisances. And they've told people to put the fires out or change it or whatever. So there is a route currently under the current code to address this, that as the petition had, not all of them, but the majority of those that signed the petition were from that same neighborhood. And it seems, in my mind, doesn't seem appropriate to pass sweeping legislation across the entire city for a localized issue in a single neighborhood.
Well, then maybe we should ban them in that neighborhood. That's another thought. I mean, I just, and that issue of calling the police, that doesn't work, Eric. I've seen it happen before. You can't, who wants to call the police on the next door neighbors every single weekend when there's a new person in there or, in one of the places around you? Is that the way you want to live? Having to call the cops constantly about
I enjoy my backyard fire.
Huh?
I enjoy my backyard fire, so I don't need to call the police.
Wouldn't affect you, okay? Because you're a resident here, so you would be able to have your fire.
Sorry.
Okay, Deanna.
So Counselor Kerr, you make a really good point about calling the cops on your neighbors. And if we pass some sort of sweeping legislation, then you're going to get more phone calls to the police about neighbors having fires. And so that's where I'm at on that. I think we're darned if we do and darned if we don't. And we do have provisions in our ordinance. So, I mean, can you maybe kind of agree with me that it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other? But I actually honestly think it's going to make it worse on our police force.
Well, I do, because we have very, very good, two at least, good agencies in this community that regulate short-term rentals, and they do a darn good job of it. And if you were to call those agencies and say, you know what, this person's property is still having fires, even though they're banned on this short-term rental, that agency will step in and take care of it because they're really good at doing that. And I've seen it. I've seen how, I remember calling myself once because someone had garbage outside their short-term rental. They were there within hours to make sure that that garbage was picked up. So I'm just saying, they're very highly regulated and they have very strict rules, and they would take care of most of those issues because they don't want their short-term rental to be, the ones that they're supervising, to be in trouble with the city. So I can't even come halfway on that. I think it's I think it's a slap in the face to the residents who live in that area. I really do. It's like discounting what they're saying, that they can't breathe in the summer. And if you think it's easy to prove a nuisance, Eric, you're wrong. To go to court and prove a nuisance is occurring is expensive. And it's not easy to prove because you have to prove that the cause and the effect are what, and it's not an easy, that cause and effect thing are not easy to prove. So you're asking people to litigate if they can't, because I've heard of people calling the police and nothing happens. Because the police can't measure how much smoke is coming into the person's house. There's no way for them to quantify it to see if it's over the limit. So I think to me, by not at least limiting them in Deanna's neighborhood, in that neighborhood where all these signatures came from, you are really doing a huge disservice to the residents of this city. And I'm ashamed. And that's all I have to say.
Lisa, when you say agencies, you mean property management companies?
Yes.
Okay. Is it more than one short-term rental that's causing the issues?
I think it's, Ken and Mary Beth have excused themselves. I'm pretty sure that it is one house behind Steve and Roxanne's house.
So do we
live on Hills.
The property management company?
No, I mean, I could drive by there
Address.
and get an address there, but it's behind their house. They're on Elliott is where the house is, and so it's their house, Steve's house, and then Nancy's house.
Okay.
Their address on there too, ask or something.
Oh, Mary Beth, can you give us some clarification as to how many houses and things we're spending all this time talking about?
Sorry, I actually have experienced smoke from backyard fires in many locations as I'm walking around in Cannon Beach. I know that the one house impacts the people that live behind it a lot because it's feels like it's almost every time they get new people in there, there's more fires. But I don't think it's the only house in Cannon Beach that has an issue. I know that there are fire pits in many of the short-term rentals, and it's a popular pastime. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to, I didn't disappear, I just changed location.
Okay, thank you.
I think anything we do is going to be a disservice to someone in this town. The people I'm hearing from think it's a disservice that we spent this much time talking about it. We've got lots of things to work on. I would like to see how we can improve this ordinance. But I have to consider those enforcement questions, the displacement of fires, and I think those are all legitimate things.
Well, I'm sorry if you think we've spent too much time talking about this, Gary, because I think it's really important. When you get a petition from people in a neighborhood saying that they are bothered by this, that it's affecting their health, and you say that, oh, we've spent too much time, we have more important things. No, I think serving the people of the community is the most important thing we can do, and that this is something they've asked for, and you guys are unwilling to do it based on something that has no legitimacy. Just, I think it's going to cause more fires on the beach. Based on what?
So
I'm also hearing from people that
Quite a few emails.
think that we're just overreaching on some of this. So
if I would,
it's not just me.
if I may suggest that we work on strengthening the 804 ordinance and get some input from the fire department also on that, and that we investigate some of those problem areas, which management company manages them. To me, the analogy I keep thinking of, my classroom and we're going to penalize the whole classroom because of some problem children. And that's not the approach I like to take, is let's try to get the problem. Let's not make everybody suffer or not. That's probably not the right word, Lisa, but let's try to take care of the problem with a solution that will make as many people possible happy.
Well, if there is a solution like that, Barb, and I'm sorry, Mayor Barb, I'm sorry. I just, I don't see it that way at all. I see it as really negating what.
But would you be willing to try that approach as a first step?
To try and to beef it up? Actually, I don't see to me, again, it's a no-brainer. The short-term rentals fires in their backyard versus the residents who live here's health and safety and the safety of the environment. To me, no, it's a non-issue. It should be so clear. To tell you the truth, I'm blown away by, I really am. I can't, I don't know. Maybe it's a property rights thing that I'm hearing or what, I don't know what it is, but you have to do what your conscience tells you. And I've said what mine tells me, and that's the end of it for me.
Okay, thank you.
I think if you're suggesting eliminating household waste fire.
Yes.
Household waste is not permitted.
We all agree with that, right?
Yard debris, not permitted.
Mhm.
And then again, and maybe I need to get Chief to weigh in on this. Is there anything in recreational fire standards?
We're full of chiefs.
The fire chief. Is there anything under recreational fire standards that, that maybe should be strengthened just out of safety, that can move the bar in the right direction on this? And I'm particularly looking at, so I'm talking about 808040, which says that fires, combustible materials should not be within 5 feet of the fire perimeter or 10 feet above the fire. Is that satisfactory, or should that?
In Oregon Fire Code, there is a Oregon Fire Code about recreational fires, and John can talk more about that. But there's also your municipal code. You can make that more strict in municipal code, and so if that's something you guys want to do, yeah, let's sit down and talk about how do we make the code more stringent and actually go and inspect the fire pits and permit them. Because right now there's really no permitting process for having a backyard burn. So let's, make a permitting process. You have a nuisance ordinance, look at that nuisance ordinance. How can we strengthen that? I think there's better ways to tackle this than just, as we talk about carte blanche.
I was curious.
That was what I was trying to convey. Sorry, Councilor Kerr, if I didn't convey that properly. That's what I was trying to convey, is I think there's better ways to tackle this. I wasn't trying to dismiss the concerns. I think there's legitimate concerns, but I think there's better ways to tackle it than just a carte blanche banning.
And how about fires within 10 feet of a building, or?
I don't know what.
The same thing that we can.
But again, we can look at what is fire code and what's practical.
I mean, I could certainly see something, if something was 10 feet away from my windows, I could see smoke blowing up and in my windows. If it's 20 feet away, maybe that's a different thing. So I think maybe there are some things we could do there that would improve safety and help to mitigate some of this, I would hope. But now you got me thinking more about an annual permit process.
Yeah.
And if there are problems, that permit could be revoked. So, I don't know. I just kind of want to.
That's a more reasonable way of tackling it.
It's cheap.
And would we be talking about a permit process, an annual permit process, for STRs essentially?
or for any, that's what, outside city limits, Department of Forestry does that. They do an annual permit process for, outside city limits. And that's everybody. So it seems like there's a already avenue or a.
I have a permitting process. So who would implement that? I mean, who would maintain that permitting process?
That would be a discussion you'd have to have of how does that work, because it is a city. And so you guys have the jurisdiction, you know, do we do an MOU that, you know, of we do it on behalf of the city? Do we do it through the police department? That's a whole discussion that happen right now. The police department does all the burn permits.
And how, yeah, and so what does implementing that process look like, and how hard is it going to be to enforce if something like that were to be done? Just a hypothetical question.
It would be something that we would have to see. Obviously, it would be a long process of education. Quite a few houses here that probably have burn pit or burn rings in their backyard. So it would be a blitz of education for those people, and some grace period where citations aren't going to be given until
You're educating them first.
we get them educated.
And so, well, and I know that this is the thing I'm concerned about with the permitting process, is it overreaching the whole town, including residents? And is it I'm not sure that I agree with the permitting process. But if it would be for residents as well as the STRs, I think that we would run into some blowback on that.
But I would say if the resident was causing the same discomfort as a short-term rental, you know, family, that they deserve to have to go through the permit. But I mean, if there's issues with their fires.
But what was it that Ashley said about we can restrict the STRs, but not homeowners?
No, I thought what Ashley said was that we could make one group STRs have a different restriction than residents. Was my recollection.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Right, yeah. STRs go through a licensing process anyways, and so the fire permit could just, the burning permit could just be part of that in terms of implementation.
How can we make some progress and make some positive progress and move on here?
Well, I think communicate the fire codes with us would help. Is there anybody that would like to join me in that work?
I'd be happy to.
Okay, so
Seems like a good one to do that.
yeah. So we'll work on strengthening the ordinance and find out who the Elliott Street Property Management Company is, and we'll get some input from you and from the police chief and put it on another agenda.
So we want to
Now.
make progress there, but not explore potential annual permitting for STRs.
No, I think we should have some permitting of STRs, but do it through their regular cycle that they go through with licensing.
Yeah.
They get licensed every year. Is it annual?
They have to renew every year.
Yeah.
So it would be a gradual, it would probably take about 18 months or something to get everybody renewed.
I think they're switching their renewal process. We used to do them every month. There was a certain amount of renewals, but I think they're switching it to all, are we switching it to all?
The
renewals at
January.
once?
All in January, right?
At the same time, I can't remember about the short term.
I think we talked about switching it over to where everyone renews at the same time, like as business license, because you do your business license and then every month we have a bunch of renewals. So yeah, as it stands right now, we take a year to get through everyone unless we did switch the process. But every year they have to renew, pay a fee, fill out a new application, make sure everything's current. And then they do inspections every 5 years. So you do an inspection when you're first licensed, and then 5 years later you do it.
And as part of the licensing, do they have the information about whether or not there's a device for outdoor burning?
No, that's not one of the questions.
Okay.
But that's something, if you guys did want to do, we could very easily add it.
Yeah.
And add additional.
And it's an opportunity to bring up this whole subject and about STRs being good neighbors to neighbors. So I think it's a move in the right direction.
Okay, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Ready to move on. Bye, Lisa. Okay. So next, on the agenda, we have consideration of entering into an agreement with the Oregon Coastal Alliance regarding the Holland Family Trust property.
And counselors. So just to give some a highlight or some background, in July, the council passed resolution 2411. And to paraphrase, basically said to the Holland family, yes, if you collect all the money for it, we will gladly property at that point. And then that essentially is all the city was going to have to do with it. So the Holland Family Trust went out and looked for a 501c3 partner to go and 501c3 partner to go and actually collect the donations. So through time, what they found was the Oregon Coastal Alliance is that conduit. The issue is that the Coastal Alliance's agreement has to be with the city. Okay, for it to be a tax-free donation, it has to be with the city. So that changes the scope of what the original agreement or resolution was. So there's a couple of things that one is the council okay with us pursuing that. The second thing is that we would have to develop a purchase sale agreement. We, the city, would have to develop a purchase sale agreement with the Holland Family Trust for that piece of property. So that adds a layer of complexity to the agreement or resolution that makes it way different than what was passed in July. And so we are coming before you to see what you would like us to do.
Questions?
So it indicates that an appraisal needs to be done and it needs to be done by the city, and those take a while. And do you have any idea about what that would cost?
It won't be a huge cost. It'd be, and I've talked with some of the members of the Holland family that we would probably look actually more to split it, I said here. So it would probably, I'm guessing a couple $1,000 just off the top of my head.
Couple months, couple thousand.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll take a couple of months. I think it may be a little quicker. Just how quickly we can line somebody up would be the thing.
It'll just be a normal commercial appraisal.
I believe so, yes. So it would go and look at the property, set that value. They did an appraisal back in 2009 that had the property valued at around $4.8 million at that point in time. The county has the property's real market value currently at about 1.3 million. So hence, when the appraisals come and we have to actually work the sale purchase agreement with the Holland family, there could be some conflict there. There are ways I think that you could mitigate that where essentially we wouldn't pay any more that was raised. That would be a way to mitigate it. But yeah, it's a very, very different transaction than what was agreed to in July.
So how does that work? So the Holland family wants 4 million, Orca is involved. I take it Orca is paying.
No, we technically we would be. So Orca is because What could happen right now is we as the city could take charitable donations to purchase a piece of property. Right? We could do that straight out, but we are not the experts in this field, nor do we have the additional capacity. So essentially Orca is basically kind of like the escrow agent for this transaction. So they collected, all the donations would be drummed up by the Holland family. They would go to Orca. Once the sufficient money was collected, essentially the escrow would be released. Property comes to us, money goes to the Holland family, et cetera.
Also, okay.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, also, I think that the Orca is going to raise the money by, advertising it as a good project. The city doesn't have the time to start, soliciting donations from people and going to people and talking to them and meeting with them. The city just can't do that. And that's why they were looking for a 501c3 that would be able to do that for them. And of course, they're going to do a lot of it themselves, but it's really, I don't think it's actually an appropriate job for the city to have to go out and start soliciting donations from people. So that's why they chose Orca.
What's the expected time frame for fundraising?
I do not know.
Okay.
Do not know. I've heard, and the members of the family or the lawyer that I have talked to is that the donors are just are chomping at the bit and ready to start writing checks. So that's what I've heard. I don't know the truth to that, but.
What, is there a time frame on when the funds need to be raised?
I believe the Holland family would like it as quickly as possible. Of course, I think when you look at the purchase sale agreement, you could put time limits on it. Or you could just leave it until you get the number. Yeah.
And with the purchase sale agreement being with Orca.
Well, the agreement, no, the purchase sale agreement is between the city of Cannon Beach and the Holland Family Trust. And then there is an agreement, the finance, essentially the funding agreement is between the city of Cannon Beach and Orca. So Orca is our agent to collect the funds.
Well, what if all the money isn't raised?
I believe that is potentially on the city side. That is one of the potential dangers of the transaction. Just as they get up to a certain point, then they're gonna potentially ask the city to make up the difference to get the property. I mean, that has been my one worry. Again, I think in the purchase sale agreement, if you just say whatever the money is raised, it's the extent of what the city of Cannon Beach would pay for the property. You could do things like that.
I think, yeah, we have to do that, I think. Yeah. Don't you think that's something that's really necessary?
Yes, Councilor Kerr, I would definitely say you would. The issue, what we would try to do, particularly more on the purchase sale side than on the Orca side of the agreement, we would look to make sure that we protected the city as much as absolutely possible. So that would be something that we would do.
And where did this draft of mutual agreement come from?
This came from Orca. Actually, I believe Cameron is here. So Cameron is with with Orca. And so that's where this original draft came from. We wanted to I wanted to come back to council before we really started hammering out any details on this agreement due to how different it is from what the council agreed to in July. So if the council is more uncomfortable with this, then we would, not necessarily go forward with that agreement. But if the council says, yes, go forward, then we'll work with Orca to hammer out the details here. And then we'll work with the Holland family on the purchase sale agreement.
I guess I was just wondering about item 2 purchase. Purchase price shall be substantiated by seller's recent within 6 months appraisal of the property. So I'm not sure, maybe Lisa can tell me what substantiated means.
In this context, I don't know, because I was bothered. It's funny that you said that, because I circled that because the seller is not part of this mutual agreement. So the seller, this mutual agreement is just between Orca and the city. So I'm not so sure how the seller can be, the seller doing something like substantiating something can be part of this agreement, since the seller isn't one of the parties. You see what I'm saying?
But it does list in number 1 under the purpose, it lists the Holland Family Trust as the seller. And so then it refers to the seller throughout the contract as the Holland Family Trust. I understand what you're saying, Lisa, but that's how it flows through.
I think that's what they're trying to do. But again, I think we would have to have a much more ironclad agreement with regards to the sale and purchase agreement with the Holland Family Trust. And then maybe the language would be a little different in this. But this, again, basically Orca is kind of the agent to facilitate the transaction, the escrow, the whole bit, kind of they're bringing it all together. And the reason it has to be with the city is because, again, it would not be a tax deductible donation if it wasn't directly with us as the city.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Who?
Oh, we both kind of started to say, I thought we were going to say at the same time. On number 4, so effectively, the city will need to pay Orca a $200,000 administrative fee, or up to.
It would come through from the donations. So you donate $1 and then they keep 10, they keep 10%. Yeah.
Yeah, the way
That's
I
the way
read.
the city does it with, that's the way the city does it with Get Lit, for example, or Tolovana Arts Colony does it with Get Lit. They are the 501c3 umbrella organization, and Get Lit, and they get paid by Get Lit a proportion of a certain amount of money to facilitate it. In this case, all that money would come from the sale. I mean, from the parties,
From
not
the donations.
Yeah, Cannon Beach doesn't pay anything.
Gary?
Yeah, my own, in thinking about number 4 as well, if fundraising did not meet a target and it had to be refunded, I think there was a clause in here that talked about that. Essentially, people would be refunded 90%.
Right. Yep, they would be refunded 90%.
And when we met with Cameron, Tim and Bruce and I and Cameron met together, and we made sure that that would be very much upfront with the donations. And I felt very confident that would happen.
I think my questions are more about, okay, well, so what is the price of this? I'm not sure it has, that's between us and the seller, essentially.
Correct.
But I support using Orca for this. I think it's something that to do.
I think the majority of the questions come at the sale agreement, not this particular agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also agree with that.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I mean, I'm glad, I'm so happy Orca stepped up to do this. And Orca will hopefully benefit somewhat too, as any umbrella organization does. But I mean, except for ironing out, there's a lot of ironing out of the contract, but I'm confident that will get done appropriately.
Okay, so everyone's okay with?
Direct staff to negotiate the agreement with Orca.
Yep.
And bring forward a new resolution.
Okay.
Support that.
All right. And then an ancillary part of that would also be we'd have to start the process for the sale purchase agreement with the Holland family.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. With that. Okay, thank you, Cameron.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of council.
Thanks. Okay, next we have the prepared food tax update from the Cannon Beach Party.
Sorry, but
Just us three. Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Myself, Deputy Chief Smith, Deputy Chief and Vice Chief Jerome, we'll go through the kind of the state of the district instead of just talk about prepared food tax. Prepared food tax is just such a small, minute part of the district. Take just a little bit to talk kind of last year of the district and where we've gone and a lot of where the food tax has taken it. I mean, that was a start of kind of the change of the district and reforming and moving forward. So again, this is for the food tax. So just to recap, what does the food tax do? It funded our first 3 firefighter positions. It funds the fire marshal position. And then it continued, we had one grant funded daytime position. It continued that funding. It also, over the last year, has begun funding our part-time program. And we'll talk about in a minute, but our part-time firefighters are an essential part of our operations staff. With the change of the community and our demographics, they've added a huge depth to us to integrate into the department. And then to add to the food tax is the levy. And it's those two together that has really begun moving us extremely forward. So the levy in November maintained the funding for myself and the deputy chief and admin positions. Those were previously funded through a general fund and 2 other levies. And so the combining of the levy continued that funding. It also hired the other 3 firefighters. So it put 2 firefighters on duty 24 hours a day. It increased our part-time program, increased our student program, and then it funded our equipment reserve, which was never funded before. The funding for equipment reserve was done just kind of the end of the budget year. Remaining unspent money was in the next budget year put into capital reserve. And that was anywhere from 5,000 to maybe 20,000. Now it's a dedicated every year. So what's our daily staffing? Now with the food tax, the levy, there's 2 on 24 hours a day. There's 2 students on, except when they're gone to school. And then 1 to 2 part-time on, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. They work 12-hour shifts. There's a daytime officer on 8 to 6. There are 3 of us there in the office Monday through Friday. And then we have the part-timers that stay the night. And so at times there's 4 to 6 people in the station even at night, between the full-time, the students, and then our part-timers that come from wherever they want to come from, Corvallis, Hillsborough, Beaverton, and they come over and stay a couple of days and stay the night at the station. And then we end up with 4 to 6 people at the station. And then our community volunteers such as Eric and a few others around Avon. We have half a dozen around. They're also the nighttime and the other peak activity responders. And so it takes all of them to make this system work. Just to add a little more, besides just the daily, then kind of the overall of what do we have? We have the 3 chiefs, we have the 2 daytime officers, 6 firefighters, 6 paid, and then 21 part-time / volunteer and 5 students. We did have 6, we're back down to 5. That's kind of a revolving door, same with part-time. It is a revolving door. We recruit we're constantly getting applications for part-time. And they last sometimes for years and sometimes they last for 6 months and then they get hired somewhere. We just had one today, come in and resign that he got hired at Grays Harbor. And it's rewarding for us because they're moving on. Now we're, refilling that. My org chart didn't blow up very well, but it just kind of shows how we're broke out of the duties of fire prevention, operations, and then down to the shift firefighters. Just briefly talk about allocation and where the money, comes and goes between personal services, maternal services, and then what I was talking about with a capital, we have a dedicated 290,000 every year goes into capital reserve. That makes it, as you'll see towards the end of here, that we are replacing equipment without having to go loans or go back to bonds. This was planned out to continue. And then the last line there is an ending fund balance. Same way as a city, we have to have that ending fund balance carry us over into the next budget year. That has to be a planned carryover from July until November. And so that's what that carryover is, the ending fund balance. When we look at calls, continuing to increase. We kind of plateaued for a year and then we took off again. And when you look at this year compared to where we were this time last year, just continue to increase. Kind of just a breakdown of what do we do. A lot of our calls, medical, the rescue, but a lot of them are service calls. And when we look at service calls, these are the down trees, these are the illegal fires on the beach. They're not, I guess, emergent, but they are. It's sitting on the power lines that are down and blocking the traffic so nobody else runs into them. Things like that. We spend a lot of time doing that. The interesting thing that is starting to shift is the tourism calls. 2020-22, we really peaked at 75% of our calls related to tourism. As you look at 2024, that has significantly changed. And I think is what we're watching, what's changing is as our calls are going up, it isn't the tourism calls that are going up. They've kind of plateaued. It's the resident calls that are going up. And so you're starting to see that percentage pretty significantly change. That the population of the community is aging. And the people that are moving in the community, it isn't younger moving in, it is definitely older that are moving in. It's retired. And so those are the more calls we're going on. It's the, but I think also the other side of it is infrastructure, of aging infrastructure. The amount of natural gas calls, natural gas leaks, power lines down, we go on, has significantly increased. And so I think that goes back to looking at the aging of infrastructure, as well as the aging of population. And I wouldn't, we don't necessarily relate those to tourism. When we're looking at tourism calls, we're relating them directly to people that don't live here. That's how we relate to tourism. We're not going to relate a gas leak necessarily to tourism. Some of the other things, state mobilizations, we participate pretty heavily in the state mobilization plan, where we send crews out statewide with the county team to participate in the Mobilization Act. And so this last year, we sent teams out 7 times within the state and 1 time out of state. And we do that, Jason and I have pretty singular conversations, we get ready to do that, of not only are we sending the crew out, but we got to make sure we can maintain our staffing here. And last year, we were able to do everyone we were asked to do. And that's a testament to also our staff that are willing to step up. And it is to ones like Eric that we can call and go, okay, are you in town and what's your availability to help cover that? And so it was pretty good last year to be able to do that but still maintain our staffing in the city and in our district. When we look at our standard cover, our standard cover looks at how many people does it take to respond to incidents and what kind of equipment. And so when we're looking at budgeting and looking at how the department operates, that's what we look at is what is our standard cover? What does it take to operate this? And so we look at our standard cover through the eyes of emergency medical services, structure fire, rope trail, surf rescue, motor vehicle accidents, and then fire prevention. Fire prevention is really new to us. We haven't had that until we start the food tax, and then we're able to hire John and really start building our inspections on our fire prevention modules. Emergency medical services. Everybody is at least an EMR. Our goal is that all paid staff be at least in advanced. Right now we have 3 intermediates. Probably the highest level you really see the department get to in years to come. I know there's been a lot of talk about having paramedic. Paramedic is a very high level to get to and very expensive to get to. Now, would it be the goal? Yes. That's going to be down the road. There is no paramedic program in the county. To get somebody to a paramedic program, they're going to have to go to Portland. They're going to have to go to Central Oregon. There is no paramedic program locally. The intermediate can do 75% of what paramedic can do. And so we can start advanced. Intermediate is listed as advanced life support. We can do pretty significant amount of stuff and get them transported. And so that's our goal, is get everybody to all the line staff to intermediate in the future. Right now, Clatsop County is not doing advanced or intermediate class this year. And so that's just going to push it back another year to get our guys to the advanced and intermediate level.
And why are they not doing that?
They just chose this year that they didn't have the time and the energy to put into that program this year. So they chose not this year not to do it.
Still an ongoing discussion.
We hope so. It's not a discussion with us.
Yeah.
That we could have filled the class just in South County, just between us, Seaside, Gearhart. We could have filled that class. And so there's a real need for it. And so hopefully next year it'll come back around. Then we look at some of our other disciplines, structure fire. With the changes that we've made with the food tax, with the levy, with the part-time, the increased recruitment of locally, it's definitely changed our staffing. We've gone from able to staff 1 engine to able to staff 2 immediately, and most of the times the 3rd out the door. The structure fire up here at the RV park is a great example of, we actually had 1 of our engines went out of service at the time. But the first engine went out, the ladder went out right after it. And then we had enough that came in the rescue and the brush rig that could have restaffed that 3rd engine. And so that's where change and able to restaff and change our response model. The rope and trail, we do a lot of rope rescue. And Jason has really built our rope systems. When I came here, our rope system training was very minimal, and Jason has taken it and completely rebuilt that to where now, when we're responding to rope rescue, we still have Nehalem and Seaside come because they're manpower intensive, but we're setting up the systems, all of our equipment, all of our technicians, all of our paid staff been through rope rescue technician. Most everybody in staff is rope rescue technician, and we're able to do these. Same thing as surf rescue, with hiring, with taking the lifeguards and hiring of COA, our surf rescue capabilities have significantly increased. We're training on the jet skis Every Wednesday, you'll see guys putting skis in the water. Last Wednesday, they had 3 skis in the water for 6 hours. That's a level of training they've got to, is in being able to do these. But it takes training. Like I said, every week they're putting the skis in the water. Vehicle hazmat really hasn't changed. We're still doing thing. We don't have that many motor vehicle accidents. The motor vehicle accident that we're going on, yes, there's a few on 101, but most of them we're going mutual aid out of Highway 26. That's really where our response is for motor vehicle accidents, is the mutual aid to assist other agencies. And then fire prevention is really the new, where we've really gone, because we haven't had that level in a number of years. And so John has really worked through that to improve that and start getting out to businesses. So the BMM that we're referring to is business and mercantile. These are the small businesses. These aren't the motels. These aren't the restaurants. B&M are the small shops. And that's where, that's kind of the lowest level that we can start at. And so John has done that. All of our line staff now have been through the training to do B&M occupancies. And John has started taking them along and starting to get these. And when we're talking inspections, it isn't about enforcement, it's about education. And start working toward preventing. Some of the biggest fear we have is the downtown core, is the old buildings in the downtown. If we can get in there and start educating and preventing, that's our goal. And that's what John has really started building. Getting out in the schools, visiting the schools, and bring the schools in the station. That's also a recruitment tool. The CPR program, really getting that going again. We did a real active with the city of maintaining the hydrant flow and inspection and got that going, and turned that over to Karen and with the water department and continuing that. One of the things that John has really taken off on is the addressing, especially outside the city, the rural addressing. We have a lot of addresses that we can't find. There's no address to them. And so the county has a program to get these signs, but there's nobody really to own it and to say, hey, this place needs a sign, and then to go put the sign in. And so John has taken that with the Topps County Public Works and with our volunteer association, a team effort to just take one section at a time throughout the district and start putting these signs in. Working with CERT, I'll let John talk a little about the elder program.
We're working with CERT, and I've been working with Indiana. We have a new program called SOS, which is the Senior Outreach Service. And while it sounds tragic and dangerous, it's actually quite a neat thing there, where we've been reaching out to some of the seniors in our area, and mostly the seniors that live alone. There's a bunch of seniors that have, families and stuff like that. The seniors that live alone, out to help with those. Last Friday, I was out in the Tolabana area on Chusana, and we met a lady who her husband had passed away last year. So we put 2 new smoke detectors in her house, and she'll be installing a residential Knox box, which is the same technology we use on businesses, so that we can get, there's a key that's very securely locked in there. I can tell you more about it at another time, so I don't want to take up too much time here. But that allows us to take that key and go in the door and to help them out. Yes, the firefighters can, do forcible entry and breach doors. That costs a lot. There's a gentleman that lives 2 blocks from our station that we had to do that twice with. Cost him over $600 on a very fixed income. That was tough. So with that, I worked with both the Volunteer Association and with the Cannon Beach Community Church, and we were able to get Knox boxes donated to several folks. One we just put in yesterday. Sorry, one we just put in Friday. So that's a neat outreach program. As Chief Reichman was saying, that's not about going people through house and saying, they're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. But looking what they're doing and see how we can help them to do right. and keep them in their house, as long as we can. One of the things we're seeing a significant benefit from that program is with, just engagement. You get to some of these, seniors, they don't talk to a program. We're getting out there and meeting some of these folks and, brighten up their day. But a good thing that's coming as a result of that is that myself and Andy, we're getting to, see kind of good there. So we're using this as pre-planning on the residential side and helping our seniors. And so it's a neat system there to get going there. And just recently, we also got a donation from, but for some of the seniors, when I gave them to them, oh, this is incredible, because now they worry about falling anymore. So, while these gentlemen
Vacancies. It also gives us a chance to pre-incident planning. And so this last year, we moved to a new record management system that has a integrated pre-incident planning module to it. And so this is allowing them to get in these businesses and do the pre-incident planning. And so we've been through our Knox access program and reviewing it. And as John mentioned, putting a lot more of the Knox boxes in. Both commercial and residential. And then the last thing was just updating the district mapping software. That's where we switched to the new records management system. And it's been amazing the amount of stuff we can put in there and just integrate together. So there's a little picture of the guys putting up one of those address signs we were talking about. This was down by the Fire Mountain School. And so there's one of the kids in Fire Mountain School out there helping them put it in. It might have been actually at the Fire Mountain School they're putting in.
the chief wants there for the moment. It's the I don't know, you would call it the interesting part, sad, or however you want to look at it. Both of these addresses are within a half mile of each other. So, on that particular street, and I'm not going to mention the street right now, but there were some serious, we had a call out on that very particular street that we didn't have a good outcome to. So that was one of the catalysts to get this going there. And we got some school kids involved in a program there. So the address program is working out really good. And I'm thankful for the Volunteer Association and their support so that we can continue that.
Just briefly, looking at, people, what does it take to run a scene? And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you kind of get the understanding of, what it takes to run some of these incidents. Not just the medical that, one engine goes and takes care of, 2 people. When we start looking at the structure fire, the rope rescue, the surf, which is a significant amount of our calls. We're a department that we don't just run medical. When you look at a lot of departments, 80% of our calls are medical calls. That's not us. This is a significant amount of what we're doing. It's where I talked a little about how do we achieve it. But we also achieve it by not just the on shift, but we achieve it by the increased recruitment of the part-time volunteers, the off-duty coming back. We achieve it by a lot of communication. We have a couple of messaging apps that we send a lot of messages out of what the staffing is, where they are, what they're doing, who's in town. There's a constant communication between all of what the staffing is, not just at the station, but just in the district as a whole.
Do you have somebody at Arch Cape?
There is nobody at Arch Cape right now. Arch Cape Station is really our training grounds right now. One of the, I think I have it laid in here, but one of the goals, we applied for a grant for that station for seismic. And one of the goals is to do that seismic upgrade when we do that, do an addition to that station to put dorms on there. And so we can start staffing that station. We are running more calls in Arch Cape than we ever have. That is increasing. And so that's one of our goals hopefully next 2 years is take our students that right now are living in duplex and a couple other places and moving them into that station. And so we can actually staff that station with students and resident volunteers and a conglomerate. We can staff that station. We look at threats. It's a constant. What we're doing is what's our threats, what's out there. And our threats are continuing calls. We can't stop that. We know that, but we have to plan for that. Volunteer, we're always looking at volunteer and the availability of volunteer. If you talk to any organization, that's a fear of any organization is the dying of volunteers, the losing of volunteers. We're kind of on the opposite right now. We're kind of riding an upward of recruitment. And so we want to keep that momentum. Apparatus costs continuing to rise as everybody looks at costs of cars. Our apparatus is well exceeding that. And then the uncontrollable costs of fuel, medical supplies, utilities. Trying to keep our wages competitive. Our goal is to keep up here. I don't want to be the constant turnover that we're losing paid staff because they're going elsewhere. We want to keep what we have. For a while, we were really struggling with medics and with ambulance and with a new general manager at medics that has done way better. But I'm still in constant communication with medics about how can we improve that. And then the last is we rely on a lot of grants and just the uncertainty of grants. To finish up, talk just a little about, we talked about the reserve and what that does. The reserve program, the transferring of money to reserve is essential for the operations of the department. And so when we look at, why do we transfer so much? Here's why is we have 4 large apparatus, 3 engines and a ladder truck that we have to maintain. And so we want to have the money in there to replace one of those every roughly 6 years. So the end of that cycle, none of those are more than 25 years old. We're getting there. We've got that cycle going. Now we're just replacing them in that. And then small vehicles, 15 to 20 years. Kind of the replacement is they start with us 3. We have them, they go down to the line and eventually they go to the beach, the lifeguards where they, in their life as they rot on the beach. And we're learning the lifeguards, what a toll that beach takes on those lifeguards vehicles when they're on the beach from April to October every day. It takes a toll on those vehicles pretty quickly. And then some of our other things are rope rescue. It's about 25,000 to replace all of our equipment, and that has to be done every 10 years. And so we're coming up on that life cycle. When we started this program, I'm really getting the rope rescue program going in 2019. Well, now we're halfway through that lifespan of that equipment. And so planning that in 10 years, now about 5, we have to replace all that soft equipment. Our jet skis, plan that we know that they've got about 10 to 15 year plan to replace them in $40,000. And then our breathing air, they have a 10 to 15 year lifespan.
What does that stand for?
Self-contained breathing apparatus. It's our air
I figured out
It's underwater.
BA, but I.
So they have a 10 year lifespan on them. that there's kind of a, you can push to kind of 15, but that's the end of it. The last time we did it on grant. The hope is to do that on the grant again, but I can't 100% rely on the grants. I have to have that plan. So when you take all that and you put all that together and you divide it out there, that's where we come up with, we're putting 290,000 in reserve every year to do all this. And we have a 20-year capital plan that takes all this and spreads it out. That's part of what the levy does. So just to wrap up the end of the year, again, I absolutely rely on grants. And so we did 2 regional grants this year. One for thermal imagers, which are cameras to see difference in heat. And so we hosted one for countywide, right at $1 million for the whole county. A couple of years ago, we did a similar thing for radios. And then we also did a kind of a South County regional for turnouts. Our turnouts have a 10-year lifespan. And although we replaced them, we've also got a lot of new people that they have turnouts that don't necessarily fit them. And so between Hamlet, Elsie, and us, we did a regional grant for that reason. And then we did the grant to, as we just briefly talked about, the seismic retrofit Large Cape Station to hopefully add on for living quarters.
When do you expect to hear back on those first 2?
They're supposed to start awarding by June and be done by September. They have to be done with awards by September 30th.
For both of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're federal grants and the federal fiscal year ends October 1. So they have to be done awarding by September 30th. I did just hear from the turnout one. I'm pretty confident we're going to get the turnout one. Just email I got of, hey, we have a question. And that's usually a pretty good indication. Of course, it says on there, this is not an award.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just a couple other things is the going forward with a new computer aided dispatch system for the whole county, which should just be amazing for our dispatch going live in October. And then moving to a countywide dispatch channel. And then the last is the lifeguards. COA has done an amazing job of just building a lifeguard program. And we're very close to having the USL accreditation, which is United States Lifeguard Association. He's put a lot of work into getting that. And then working on the towers. I'm not sure we're gonna get the towers replaced this year, but that's been an ongoing and one of his big goals.
So it'll still be the power that we've had?
Yeah, I just don't see us getting a this year.
The concept that we're trying to go with is putting 2 smaller towers, one at Gower and one at Tolovana, to increase the patrol and scanning capabilities. And those are usually the highest concentration of beach goers. And so having 2 smaller towers on either one of those locations. But yeah, money wise, we're working on getting some quotes and figures to see how feasible it is. But
and the current tower will stand back up.
Yeah.
Ever and ever.
Don't know yet.
We'll keep working together.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go to the order, Bruce asked. I said, okay.
You're such a pal. Thank you. Lolly Champion recently indicated in the bulletin that we published incorrect information regarding the upcoming initiative petition in the recent issue of the bulletin. The information to which Lolly refers comes from the official draft of a ballot title. Pursuant to state law, once a city receives a prospective initiative petition, the city attorney's office drafts a ballot title which is a concise and impartial statement summarizing the initiative and its major effects. The city then notices the ballot title and provides a 7-day period to allow any registered voter to appeal the ballot title for being incorrect, insufficient, not concise, or unfair. The ballot title that we are referring to went through this process in June 24 without a challenge. So the information is accurate. It is from the official ballot title, and the city will make this clarification again in an upcoming newsletter. That's all I have.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I actually do have a question.
Go ahead.
Because I think that, and I could be wrong on this, Bruce, but
Sure.
I think that there was an indication, I thought the way that was posed was that it was saying that the ballot title wasn't incorrect, but that it was, there needed to be clarification that it was written by the city and not by the organization that filed for the initiative.
If you cut out a little bit, but I think I got what you were saying, and it is the city attorney's office. Once the prospective initiative petition is filed, the city attorney's office drafts the ballot title, and that includes the information that was included in Lolly's writings. So it is something that the city produces.
Thank you for that clarification. One other question. I know that I was privy to, I think we all got that email
Which
from Lolly Champion.
I did.
And but it also indicated in there about the initiative itself and it being published in the bulletin as used. Is there gray area there around using staff time for political purposes?
We can report, but there was not, the staff was not taking a position. It was going from the ballot title, taking the information from the information that's available through the supervisor of elections.
So was there any, maybe, I don't know, reading the article that was written, it didn't really feel to me like there was a lot of editorial in there, that it was just basically reporting the facts.
Right.
So just so it can't be editorialized by staff, then that's what that would mean.
Right, and we were very careful in that particular article, knowing that it, could, some people could have hard feelings about what's said. And so we were very careful.
Sure. Thank you.
Stay neutral. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Okay, good of the order.
I have a question, it's probably for Bruce. We got an email 3 weeks ago about an RV park tour. Do we have an update on when and if that's supposed to happen for the infrastructure stuff?
Yeah, we're trying to schedule. Right now, we're in the middle of the move and we're trying to make it all come together. But we'll get back with you tomorrow on the date.
BJ from Escape Lodging, they are opening a new.
Okay.
They are opening a new hotel in Newburgh. So he is getting back to me with dates after April 17th, if you still want to. I just haven't heard back from him yet.
Okay, yeah, it just, the email we got was, it needs to happen really quickly and then happen. So.
Right, and that's also why I sent the follow-up email to Deanna's question to everybody so they could get a look at what kind of the capital needs were. So.
Okay.
Lovely. Thank you for that, because that's
actually what reminded me of.
We can't get to the property.
Yeah, so when I hear back from BJ, I will send out those dates. But again, he's really busy until the 17th.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Other items for good of the order?
I have one. Can we go over the schedule real quick?
Yeah, I have three, so,
three? Okay.
but you can go first.
Tonight is our last city council meeting here in the room. So just to recap, from our discussion last week, in May, we have, canceled our May 6th meeting and combined it into the May 13th meeting. And then I sent out an email of all the alternative dates that we received or that we discussed. The chamber was available for all of them. I'll be getting the website updated and the calendars updated. So, but all of those dates were in the email.
And you haven't sent us the RSVPs yet for those, correct?
The calendar, no, I haven't
Okay,
sent it yet.
okay, no, I'm not.
It's not like she's moving or.
No, that's what I just want to make sure I hadn't missed it.
Where were we for August? Was it the 5th?
Let me put it down here in August.
I think we bumped to the 4th, right? Yeah.
So that one was moved to the 4th.
Yeah, and it says Gary may be out, please keep light.
Okay, yes, I may be.
Yeah, maybe.
Keep it light.
We'll keep
Yeah.
with you on that one. And I'm hoping to get all of those updates out tomorrow.
And Jen, is
Yeah.
Coffee with the Counselors still going to be the 14th?
Okay, so no, on the Coffee with the Counselor one, the direction was we would do it the 14th if we could get two people to do it, but Eric is unable to attend. So we would not do Coffee with the Counselor in May.
Okay,
Unless you guys want to look at other options.
no, I think that's okay.
So when we get the website updated,
I did, say,
Rusty got the
So
website
they're up
updated
there.
already, so I'll get the calendars updated.
Okay,
And then we'll do a notice that there's no Coffee with the Counselor. We can do a,
can't remember if I removed it, if I put canceled next to it, but
okay.
it's,
We had enough at the last one to last for two. So,
so are you finished, Jen?
I'm finished.
Okay, great segue, because one of the things I want to talk about is, I think it's time to, with Coffee with the Counselors, that everyone is controlled by how we do it in city council meetings, so that people can't just, speak whenever they want. And I feel really sad that I even have to be saying this, but we have to stop the language in my classroom now.
Barb,
Yeah.
I feel that was my fault. I should have controlled the meeting more.
It's happened twice.
Well, I
and-
usually make a list and I go down the list and I let people butt in when they weren't next, and I will not let that happen again.
Are you referring to Zoom and
I'm referring to Zoom that
can we?
they would
mute
raise
people until they're given
everybody's muted,
permission?
just like we do at our city
Yeah.
council meetings. Everyone's muted if you want to say something. So you still can butt in, but you raise your hand and Rusty unmutes you. So that somebody can't accidentally say something when they think they're on mute and under their control.
Oh, I see. So you're just talking about Zoom.
Right. Well, and because I think the people, the counselors that are in charge of Coffee with the Counselors, you guys control, you're very good at controlling the audience. What we can't control is people just on Zoom
Oh, like,
saying something out loud when they think they're muted.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's happened a couple times.
Yeah. So I briefly talked to Rusty and he's willing to watch for the hands up, which he's very good at. And
Okay, that
okay.
makes sense. Yeah, that's not,
everybody okay with that?
yeah.
Yes.
I'm great with that. I think that one other thing that might be a good idea at Coffee with the Counselors, I'm going to that, is setting some sort of a time limit so everyone gets a chance to speak, and then you can circle back to the people.
Deanna, that was my fault. I took responsibility for that. I let one speaker in particular go on for 15 minutes. I never should have done that. And I said it won't happen again.
Under
And we
the,
still ended 3 minutes early, so it's not like nobody
because-
didn't get their
That's because
opportunity.
everybody wanted to rush out.
Yeah.
under the circumstances, Lisa, I think you did a great job. I am not faulting you in any way. I think you and Gary did a great job of doing the best you could to control the meeting that you were presented with. And I'm sorry that that happened to both of you.
Well, it won't happen again, and I do take responsibility, and I don't want to time people. I absolutely do not want to time
No.
people. But I think that after a point has been made a couple times, I think that it's my job to say, okay, you made your point. Can we move on?
Okay,
And I'll do my best to support you in that too.
yeah.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two, 12 Days of Earth Day starts April 11th. And so there's a variety of activities. So schedules on the website and Park Committee works hard on that. So get involved, please. And then the last thing is I would like to remind everyone in the community that City Hall and Police Station are going through a move. For all of us, we have all moved at least once or twice in our lives, and it's a stressful time. And let's be patient with the transition and hope that it's smooth, and try to remember that they're leaving their home that they've had for many years. Hasn't been a very nice home, but they're still leaving it. And that remind people that City Hall will be closed on the 14th and 15th, and then opening on the 16th at their new location.
Hey, Jen,
Yes.
this is Bruce. Is this the last meeting in that chamber?
Yep.
You haven't been paying attention.
I'm sorry. No, I have been paying. I was listening to you. It was inspirational, Mayor. But it was just hitting me that that's the last meeting. Yeah.
This is, yeah. And you didn't even show up, I tell you.
I know that's, yeah, really, I would rather be there.
You're gonna miss the
Yeah, I'm sure
cocktails.
you will,
You're gonna
yeah,
miss the cocktails after.
right.
Okay.
The ballot box, where's that going again?
So it'll be at the Temp City Hall.
Okay.
When
Oh, good.
the voters pamphlet comes out, it'll have all the information on the new location.
Okay,
But
cool.
we
I didn't think about that.
The county and about where to place it, and they said to definitely do it at the temp site. It'll actually be moved, they're pouring the pad this week, and then they'll physically move the ballot box next week, and the county will help advertise the new location.
Cool. Yep. Okay, anything else? Okay, the meeting's adjourned.